The moment a man starts asking questions he has no right to ask is usually the moment he realizes he's already in love. The 29th floor of Whitmore Global still glowed against the Manhattan skyline long after most of the city had gone quiet. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected rows of empty workstations, abandoned coffee cups, and the pale blue light of computer screens left in sleep mode. It was nearly 9:40 p.m. when the strategy meeting finally ended. Employees filtered out with exhausted smiles and loosened ties, eager to escape another 14-hour day. At the end of the conference room sat Adrian Whitmore, 36 years old, billionaire founder, the man business magazines called untouchable. His charcoal suit was still perfect. His expression was not. Across the room, Claire Bennett gathered her files into the worn leather notebook she carried everywhere. Unlike everyone else in the office, she never stayed to socialize after meetings. No rooftop drinks. No networking dinners. No office gossip. She simply disappeared every night as if another life waited for her somewhere beyond those glass doors. Adrian had noticed that months ago. He had noticed everything, though he never admitted it. The way she tucked loose strands of blonde hair behind her ear while thinking. The old silver bracelet she wore every single day. The concert ticket stub peeking from her notebook like something she refused to throw away. Small details. Meaningless details. Details a CEO shouldn't know. Claire thanked the team quietly and stepped toward the elevator when someone entered the reception area carrying white roses. The entire floor seemed to pause. "Delivery for Claire Bennett," the florist said with a smile. Claire blinked in surprise. A few employees exchanged glances. Someone laughed softly. Adrian looked up from the documents in front of him without meaning to. Claire accepted the bouquet carefully. No card was visible. She smiled, a small, real smile Adrian had never seen inside the office. Something tightened in his chest before he could stop it. 10 minutes later, from the window of his office, Adrian saw her leave the building. Rain had started falling over Midtown, painting the streets silver beneath the traffic lights. Claire stood under the awning, clutching the flowers against her coat. Then a black sedan pulled up. A tall man stepped out. Claire walked toward him immediately. The man opened an umbrella over her. She smiled again. And then she hugged him. Adrian's hand tightened around the crystal tumbler on his desk. The city outside blurred for a second. Downstairs, Claire and the stranger disappeared into the car. 15 minutes later the elevator doors opened again. Adrian had no idea why she had returned. Claire hurried down the quiet hallway carrying a forgotten file against her chest. She stopped cold when she saw him standing near the records room. The entire floor was silent. His tie was loosened now. One hand in his pocket. Eyes fixed only on her. She took a small breath. "Mr. Whitmore?" His voice came lower than usual. Colder too. "Who were you with?" Claire stared at him. The file slipped slightly in her hands. Outside, thunder rolled over Manhattan. Inside, for the first time in years, Adrian Whitmore realized he had already lost control. Claire looked at him for several seconds without answering. The rain tapped softly against the glass walls behind them, filling the silence that neither of them seemed ready to break. Adrian had asked the question like he owned the right to it. He did not. They both knew that. Claire lowered her eyes first and adjusted the folder in her hands. "Someone important," she said quietly. The answer landed harder than Adrian expected. Something unreadable crossed his face before it disappeared again behind the calm expression every employee at Whitmore Global knew too well. "I forgot the Reynolds proposal in the archive room," Claire added gently. "I came back for it." Adrian stepped aside without another word. She passed him, close enough for him to catch the faint scent of rain and white roses. A moment later she disappeared into the records room, leaving him standing alone in the hallway. He stayed there longer than necessary. The next morning Manhattan woke beneath a gray sky. By 7:30, Claire was already on the subway downtown, her notebook open on her lap. Inside the worn leather cover sat receipts, handwritten notes, a folded concert ticket from 2 years ago, and a small photograph tucked between the pages. The woman in the picture smiled warmly despite the hospital bracelet around her wrist. Claire touched the edge of the photo before closing the book. 40 minutes later she stepped into St. Matthew Oncology Center carrying coffee and a paper bag from the bakery across the street. Room 512 smelled faintly of lavender and fresh linen. "You are early again," her mother said with a tired smile from the chair beside the window. Claire laughed softly. "I brought blueberry muffins. The good ones." Her mother glanced at the bag. "Claire, you should stop spending money on me." Claire sat beside her and looked out at the city. "I am not spending money on you. I am investing in future complaints about hospital food." The older woman smiled, but her eyes drifted toward the stack of medical bills on the side table. Claire noticed immediately and moved them beneath a magazine. "Do not," she said quietly. "We are okay." The truth was they were not okay. Claire worked full-time at Whitmore Global. She freelanced weekends. She slept 4 hours most nights. Every dollar had a destination before it even reached her account. But no one at the office knew. They only knew the quiet analyst who never joined happy hour and disappeared the second the workday ended. By 9:15 she was back at headquarters. Employees moved quickly through the lobby carrying laptops and coffee cups. Claire stepped into the elevator just as the doors began to close. A hand stopped them. Adrian entered. The space suddenly felt smaller. Mather spoke. He noticed the dark circles beneath her eyes. The coffee stain near her sleeve. The leather notebook pressed tightly against her chest. On the 29th floor the doors opened. Claire stepped out first. "Mr. Whitmore?" He looked up. She gave a polite smile. "Thank you for moving yesterday." Then she walked away. Adrian remained still inside the elevator as the doors slowly closed again. Somewhere in the back of his mind, one thought refused to leave. Someone important. The next 2 weeks passed under the weight of deadlines and sleepless nights. Whitmore Global had landed a major healthcare partnership, and the entire strategy division moved as if the building itself never slept anymore. Conference rooms stayed lit past midnight. Coffee orders doubled. People forgot what day it was. Claire simply worked harder. Every morning she arrived before 8. Every evening she left with her leather notebook pressed against her chest and disappeared into the city before anyone could ask where she was going. Adrian noticed because he always noticed. He also noticed the small things no one else seemed to see. The silver bracelet around her wrist was worn thin near the clasp. The concert ticket still slipped from the back pocket of her notebook. And every afternoon at exactly 3:15 she paused for 10 seconds by the window beside the East Conference Room, looking toward downtown. One Thursday night, the office finally emptied close to 10. Rain tapped against the glass again, softer this time. Claire sat alone in the project room reviewing numbers beneath the warm glow of a desk lamp. Her shoes rested beside her chair. A half-finished cup of tea sat untouched. Adrian passed by on his way out, and slowed without meaning to. Through the glass wall he saw her leather notebook lying open. A folded page had slipped loose beside it. He should have kept walking. Instead his eyes landed on the words written in neat blue ink. "Someday I want a life that feels safe. Nothing expensive. Just safe." Adrian stood still. Beneath the sentence rested the old concert ticket. New York Philharmonic. 2 seats. Date expired almost 2 years ago. Beside it sat a small silver ring threaded onto a ribbon and a photograph of Claire smiling beside her mother outside a hospital garden. Claire looked up suddenly and saw him. She immediately closed the notebook. "Sorry," Adrian said quietly. The words surprised both of them. Claire smiled faintly. "You do not have to apologize." He stepped inside. "You are still working." She looked at the spreadsheet on her screen and laughed softly. "The report is due tomorrow morning. I am trying to convince the numbers to cooperate." Adrian pulled out the chair across from her. "Do they usually listen?" "Never." For a moment the room felt strangely easy. Outside the city glowed beyond the rain. Inside, only the hum of computers remained. Claire reached for her tea and accidentally brushed the notebook off the desk. Papers scattered onto the floor. Adrian bent to help. The concert ticket slid toward him. He picked it up first. "You never used it?" he asked before thinking. Claire froze. Her fingers closed around the silver ring instead. "No," she said softly. "I was supposed to go with someone important." Adrian looked at her. "What happened?" Claire smiled, but it did not reach her eyes this time. "Life happened." Silence settled between them again. Then her phone lit up on the desk. "Hospital calling." Claire stood immediately. Her expression changed in an instant. She grabbed her bag, the notebook, everything. "I have to go." Adrian rose too. "Is everything all right?" Claire forced a smile already halfway to the door. "I hope so." Minutes later he stood alone in the empty project room. On the floor beside his chair lay something she had missed. The silver ribbon from the ring. The next morning the silver ribbon still rested in Adrian's coat pocket. He had noticed it twice before breakfast and once during the drive to headquarters. It made no sense. It was only a ribbon. Thin. Faded. Meaningless. Yet somehow he had not left it behind. By 8:30 the executive floor was already moving. Screens glowed. Phones rang. The healthcare project had entered its final phase and every department was under pressure. Claire arrived 6 minutes late for the first time since joining Whitmore Global. Her hair was still damp from the rain outside. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She apologized softly and slipped into her seat before opening her notebook. Adrian watched from the head of the conference table. She had not looked at him once. The meeting stretched past noon. Claire barely spoke unless spoken to. At one point she pressed 2 fingers against her temple and closed her eyes for a second before continuing her presentation. No one noticed except Adrian. By 7 that evening the office had emptied again. The city beyond. The windows glowed gold and blue beneath early spring rain. Claire remained in the strategy room surrounded by files, her laptop open, a paper cup of coffee untouched beside her. Adrian stepped inside carrying another cup. She looked up in surprise. He placed it beside her without comment. "You forgot to drink the first one," he said. Claire blinked. "You noticed?" The question came out softer than she intended. Adrian pulled out the chair across from her. "You have not eaten either." Claire looked away. "Busy day." He slid a small paper bag onto the desk. "Sandwich. Fruit. Water." She stared at it. "Mr. Whitmore, Adrian," he corrected quietly before he could stop himself. Silence settled between them. Rain tapped against the glass. Somewhere down the hall a printer hummed. Claire opened the paper bag slowly. "Thank you." They worked side by side for almost an hour. No tension. No titles. Just 2 people beneath office lights while Manhattan moved outside. Then Claire's phone lit up again. "Hospital calling." Adrian saw the color leave her face. She answered immediately and turned away. "I am on my way," she whispered. The call ended. She grabbed her coat too quickly and her leather notebook slipped open onto the desk. The concert ticket slid free again. So did the photograph. Adrian reached down to help before she could stop him. This time he saw the hospital bracelet clearly around her mother's wrist in the picture. St. Matthew Oncology Center. Claire gently took it back. Her eyes lowered. "My mother," she said before he could ask. Adrian remained still. "Is she all right?" Claire forced a smile that looked exhausted around the edges. "Some days are better than others." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "The man from the other night," she said quietly without facing him. Adrian looked up immediately. "He is my mother's doctor." The room went silent. Claire left before he answered. Minutes later Adrian stood alone beside the rain-covered windows. In his hand rested the silver ribbon she had forgotten again. Down on the street below, he watched her hurry into the storm alone. The days that followed felt different even if either of them admitted it. Adrian stopped asking questions he had no right to ask. Claire stopped looking surprised when coffee appeared beside her desk during late meetings. The healthcare project consumed everyone. Deadlines moved closer. Sleep moved further away. Yet somewhere inside the pressure and endless spreadsheets, an unspoken rhythm formed between them. Tuesday night the strategy division remained at headquarters past 10 again. Rain streaked the windows while Manhattan glittered below like scattered gold. Claire sat cross-legged in her chair reviewing financial models. Adrian stood near the presentation screen rewriting projections himself after half the team had gone home. "You know," Claire said softly without looking up, "the entire company is terrified of you." Adrian glanced over. "Only the entire company?" She laughed quietly. The sound surprised both of them. He had heard her smile before. He had never heard her laugh. "You are impossible to read," she said. Adrian leaned against the table. "And you disappear every evening like a mystery novel." Claire lowered her eyes to the notebook in front of her. "Maybe some people do not have the luxury of staying." The words lingered between them. Before Adrian could answer, his phone vibrated. Board message. Urgent. He ignored it. 20 minutes later Claire stood by the window stretching her shoulders. Her phone lit up. She smiled immediately. The kind of smile people gave someone they trusted. Adrian noticed before he wanted to. She answered softly. "I will be there soon." Her expression gentled. "Tell her I am bringing the blueberry muffins." Adrian looked away first. Jealousy should have disappeared after learning the truth. It did not. It only changed shape. The next evening the executive board meeting turned tense. Numbers were good. Investors were satisfied. Adrian was not listening. Through the glass wall outside the boardroom he saw Claire in the lobby speaking with a man in a navy coat. Tall. Clean-cut. Familiar. The doctor. The man smiled. Claire laughed softly at something he said. Then she handed him the paper bag she had been carrying all afternoon. Adrian stopped speaking mid-sentence. Around the table several executives exchanged looks. "Mr. Whitmore?" someone asked carefully. He did not answer immediately. Down below the doctor gently adjusted Claire's umbrella before they walked toward the elevators together. Something sharp twisted inside him before reason could catch up. 10 minutes later the meeting ended early. No one understood why. At 8:30 Claire returned upstairs carrying files for tomorrow's presentation. She found Adrian alone in the strategy room standing by the dark windows. He turned the moment she entered. "You know him well?" The question came too quickly. Claire blinked. "Dr. Reed?" Adrian said nothing. Claire set down the folders slowly. "He has been treating my mother for almost a year." Silence filled the room. "He stays late when she is afraid." Claire continued softly. "Sometimes he brings books because she cannot sleep." Adrian looked out toward the city again. The rain had returned. "He seems important to you." Claire smiled faintly. "He helped my mother keep hope." Her phone vibrated again. Hospital message. Her smile disappeared instantly. She grabbed her coat. "I have to go." Adrian watched her leave without another word. Minutes later his eyes fell to the chair she had occupied. The old concert ticket had slipped from her notebook again. This time he picked it up and turned it over. On the back, written in faded blue ink, were 5 words. "For when life feels safe." 3 days later Claire did not come to work. At first no one noticed because the healthcare launch had reached its final week and every department was overwhelmed. By noon the strategy team started asking questions. By 2 o'clock her desk still sat untouched. The coffee mug she always used remained beside her monitor. The leather notebook was gone. Adrian told himself it should not matter. At 4:30 he found himself opening the project tracker just to see her schedule. Medical leave. 1 day. No explanation. That evening Manhattan glowed beneath cold spring rain as Adrian left headquarters later than usual. Traffic crawled near St. Matthew Oncology Center. He almost told the driver to continue. Instead he looked out the window and froze. Claire stood near the entrance beneath a streetlight wearing the same beige coat she always wore to work. Dr. Reed stood beside her. In his hands rested a stack of medical papers. Claire lowered her head. Even from across the street, Adrian could see the exhaustion in her shoulders. Dr. Reed handed her an envelope. She shook her head immediately. He said something softly. Claire stepped back. Then she smiled through tears and refused again. The light changed. Traffic moved. Adrian never asked the driver to stop. The next morning Claire returned to Whitmore Global as if nothing had happened. Only she looked smaller somehow. More tired. During the afternoon presentation she lost her place halfway through a slide and apologized quietly before continuing. After the meeting Adrian asked her to stay. The conference room emptied. Claire gathered her papers slowly. He placed an envelope on the table. St. Matthew Oncology Foundation Assistance Program. Claire stared at it without touching it. You looked into the hospital, she said softly. It was not a question. Adrian remained silent. Claire smiled sadly. I appreciate the intention. She pushed the envelope back toward him. But I cannot take it. Claire. She looked up. My mother taught me something when I was little, she said. Help is a gift. But dignity matters too. Her fingers tightened around the old silver bracelet. I do not want people saving me because they feel sorry for me. Adrian stood motionless. I do not feel sorry for you. The room went quiet. Claire looked at him fully then. Then why? The answer reached his throat and stopped there. Because I notice when you skip lunch. Because I know you drink tea when you are tired. Because you carry a concert ticket from 2 years ago and still believe in safe places. Because watching you leave every night feels wrong. Instead, he said only one thing. Because you should not carry everything alone. Claire lowered her eyes. For several seconds neither moved. Then her phone vibrated. Hospital message. Her face changed immediately. She grabbed her bag. A folded invoice slipped free and landed on the table between them. Outstanding balance due. $48,000. Claire picked it up too late. Silence filled the room. She closed her eyes briefly. Now you know, she whispered before walking away. The next morning Whitmore Global felt different. Not because anything had changed. Because something had broken. Claire arrived at 8 as usual, carrying her leather notebook and coffee, but conversation stopped half a second too late when she passed. Eyes followed her. Phones lowered. Whispers replaced greetings. By 10:30 the rumor had reached every department. Someone had leaked photos. One image showed Claire leaving the executive floor after midnight beside Adrian. Another captured him handing her coffee in the strategy room. A third showed them alone near the conference windows. The captions spread through internal chats faster than any project update. CEO favorite. Fast track promotion. Special treatment. Claire stood frozen in the copy room staring at her phone. Her hands trembled slightly. She locked the screen without reading the rest. At 11:15 the healthcare launch rehearsal began. Executives filled the auditorium. Investors watched remotely. Claire sat near the back with her notes unopened. Adrian stepped onto the stage and immediately noticed she would not look at him. Halfway through the presentation his phone vibrated. Anonymous email. Subject line: Ask your employee where she spends her nights. Attached were photos of Claire entering St. Matthew Oncology Center and Dr. Reed walking beside her. Adrian closed the message instantly. Rage was not the right word. It was something quieter. Colder. By the time the rehearsal ended Claire was gone. Her desk sat empty. The leather mug was missing. Only one envelope remained beneath her keyboard. Human Resources Resignation Notice. Effective immediately. Adrian read it once. Then again. The room around him disappeared. 30 minutes later rain fell over Manhattan as he stood outside St. Matthew Oncology Center holding the folded letter in his hand. Through the lobby windows he saw Claire sitting beside her mother. She smiled while peeling an orange. Her mother laughed softly at something she said. For the first time in weeks, Claire looked peaceful. Adrian did not go inside. He turned to leave and stopped. Dr. Reed stood nearby holding coffee cups. "You are Adrian Whitmore," he said calmly. Adrian nodded once. The doctor smiled faintly. "She talks about work the way people talk about home." Adrian looked back through the glass. Claire adjusted the blanket around her mother with gentle hands. "She never asked for help," Dr. Reed continued. "Last month she sold her piano to cover treatment costs." Adrian looked at him sharply. "Piano?" The doctor nodded. "Concert level. She stopped playing after her father died." Silence settled between them. "You know what she tells her mother every week?" Dr. Reed asked quietly. "That things will be okay because she finally found a place where she feels safe." Adrian stood motionless. Inside the lobby, Claire reached into her notebook. The old concert ticket slipped free for a second before she tucked it back again. Safe. The word hit him harder now than ever before. Because somewhere along the way she had become that word to him too. Friday night arrived with the annual Whitmore Global Foundation Gala. The Grand Meridian Ballroom shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers and walls of white roses. Investors, executives, and press moved through the room in black tuxedos and evening gowns while cameras flashed beneath the company crest. Normally, Adrian Whitmore owned every room he entered. Tonight he stood behind the stage curtain holding a folded resignation letter that had already creased at the edges. Claire was not there. Her chair at the executive table remained empty. 20 minutes before the keynote speech, Adrian walked into the control room. "Cancel the original presentation," he said quietly. The event director stared at him. "Sir?" Adrian handed over a flash drive. "Use this instead." Minutes later, the ballroom lights dimmed. Guests settled. The giant screen behind the stage came alive. But instead of corporate numbers and foundation achievements, photographs appeared. A quiet hospital garden. A paper bag of blueberry muffins. A worn leather notebook. Then a picture of volunteers delivering care packages to oncology patients. Murmurs spread through the room. Adrian stepped onto the stage. No notes. No prepared speech. Only silence. "Tonight I was supposed to speak about leadership," he began. "Instead, I want to speak about dignity." The room fell still. "A few days ago, someone inside this company chose to turn kindness into gossip and hard work into suspicion." Several executives shifted uneasily. Adrian continued. "The person hurt by those rumors never asked for special treatment. She never asked for help. She carried responsibilities most people would break under, and still showed up every day with grace." On the screen appeared a new title. The Claire Bennett Family Support Initiative. A new foundation program for oncology families facing financial hardship. The ballroom went silent. "This program exists because one employee reminded me what strength looks like." Cameras flashed. No one moved. Adrian looked directly into the crowd. "And for the record, if anyone received special treatment, it was me." A soft stir spread across the room. "Because I was the one given patience, given trust, given kindness I did not deserve." At the back of the ballroom, the doors opened quietly. Claire stood there beside her mother in a simple navy dress, frozen beneath the lights. She had not planned to come. Dr. Reed stood a few steps behind them with a gentle smile. Adrian saw her immediately. For a moment the entire room disappeared. "Miss Bennett," he said softly into the microphone. Every head turned. Claire looked ready to leave. Adrian stepped down from the stage before she could. The crowd parted silently as he crossed the ballroom. He stopped in front of her and held out something small. The old silver ribbon. Her eyes widened instantly. "You kept it," she whispered. Adrian nodded. "You forgot it." Claire looked down. He placed the ribbon in her hand gently. "And I think you forgot something else too." He reached into his pocket and handed her the concert ticket. On the back, beneath her faded handwriting, another sentence had been added in careful ink. "Then let me help make it safe." The ballroom remained silent long after the music resumed. Claire still held the concert ticket in her hands as if it weighed more than paper should. Her mother stood beside her with tears shining softly in her eyes. Across the room, executives lowered their gazes. Reporters stopped writing. Adrian had already returned to the stage, but he was no longer speaking like a billionaire or a chief executive officer. He was simply a man who had finally stopped hiding. 2 weeks later, spring arrived fully in Manhattan. The trees along Central Park carried pale green leaves again, and the city felt lighter somehow. St. Matthew Oncology Center held a small gathering in the hospital garden for families supported by the new initiative. Volunteers carried flowers. Patients sat beneath white tents. Claire walked slowly beside her mother through the pathways lined with tulips. Treatment had started moving in a better direction. Not perfect. Better. Sometimes better was enough. Near the fountain, a familiar melody drifted through the air. Piano. Claire stopped immediately. Beneath a canopy near the garden sat an upright piano decorated with white roses. Adrian stood beside it. Dr. Reed smiled from nearby. Claire looked at him in confusion. "You sold yours," Adrian said quietly when she reached him. "So I borrowed one." Her eyes widened. "How did you know?" Adrian smiled faintly. "Someone told me you stopped playing when life became too heavy." Claire looked down at the keys. Her fingers hovered uncertainly before pressing one note. Then another. The melody came back slowly. Softly. Like something waking up after a long winter. Around them, conversations faded. Her mother covered her mouth with trembling hands. Adrian stood silently beside the piano listening. When the song ended, Claire looked up. "I used to play this before concerts," she whispered. Adrian reached into his coat pocket. One final envelope. Inside rested the old concert ticket mounted inside a small frame beside the silver ribbon. Beneath it were new words written in his careful handwriting. "Safe is not a place. It is the person who stays." Claire looked at him through tears she no longer tried to hide. "Adrian." He took a slow breath. "The first night I asked who you were with because I was jealous." A small laugh escaped her. "I know. Then. I kept asking myself why." He looked toward the garden where her mother laughed with Dr. Reed among the flowers. "Now I know the answer." He met her eyes again. "Because somewhere between coffee cups, late nights, and a concert ticket you became home." Silence settled softly around them. The city moved beyond the hospital walls. The fountain shimmered in afternoon light. Claire stepped closer and placed the framed ticket against his chest. "You know," she said quietly,